Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. It's not just about a car. It's about what happens when family members take more than what's offered and the price you pay for standing up for what's yours. Today in the rLounge, it's not just any car. It's a vintage 1967 Chevy Impala. Parents sold my car to pay for my sister's wedding. I reported them and they had to pay back every penny. I, 28 male, work in IT, and that somehow makes my parents think I'm a money printing machine. While I make a decent living, my job isn't the gold mine my family seems to think it is. The moment I got my first paycheck, the demands started pouring in. My parents needed help with bills, my sister wanted to borrow money just for a little while, and so on. At first, I obliged a few times, but when I saw it becoming a pattern, I backed off. Since then, my relationship with them has gone sour. Honestly, I don't care. If they want me just for the money, I'm better off without them. A few months back, my dad called me out of the blue asking about my work and stuff. He asked if I got the promotion I had been waiting for. It made me chuckle. The promotion he was talking about was a topic of the history. I got it 2 years ago and even changed my job after that. I remember talking about it years ago when I visited home during the holidays, and since then, he didn't have the time to check on me. Well, I can't blame him solely. I was also no contact with them. I asked him what he wanted, and he told me that my sister, Lisa, 25 female, was getting married, and I should pitch in. I freaked out. Why the hell should I fund her wedding? Dad hesitantly informed that he has taken up the responsibility of bearing it, and obviously he cannot manage the expenses all by himself. That's how I came into the picture. My dad doesn't make much. He works at a small firm that pays him just enough to make ends meet. My mother works a part-time job but can barely contribute to household expenses. We were always in a financial crisis. The only good thing that happened was due to my dad's job, I was able to secure a student loan and get into a decent college, which helped me build a stable career. Not to forget that I slogged my butt during college to bear my living expenses. Even after getting a job, I continuously upskilled myself to land a better paying job so that I could pay off my loan. It was only a year back that I was able to pay it off. On the flip side, my sister has always been an entitled brat. If she wants something, she'll find a way to get it. I wasn't surprised that she tricked my parents into funding her wedding. Despite her parents' crumbling finances, she always managed to get the best of things, be it clothes, gadgets, or even trips with friends. I took my first trip when I was in my senior year of college, and after saving pennies for 3 years from my part-time job. While I moved out at 17 to live on my own, she clung on to my parents until 22, to live by herself. No, she couldn't afford that. She moved in with her boyfriend, and now she's piling up on him. I'm not on bad terms with my sister. Not that we hate each other, we just don't get along. That dynamic didn't change when we became adults. So when they asked me to foot the bill for her big day, I said no. I wasn't being stingy. I just couldn't justify spending tens of thousands on an event for someone who barely acknowledged my efforts otherwise. To say my refusal didn't sit well with them would be an understatement. My parents called me selfish and accused me of failing my family obligations. I asked my dad why he volunteered to pitch in when he knew he couldn't afford it. He said how could he refuse it? As a girl's dad, it was his duty to step up. I was so annoyed by this. I mean, in which century do we live in? Anyway, I didn't get into the details and said, sorry, I'm out. Obviously, they didn't take it well. She sent some nasty and passive-aggressive comments on my way, but I didn't mind it and didn't budge. Eventually, it subsided and I moved on with my life, thinking it was over. Boy, was I wrong. 2 weeks back, I went on a work trip for 3 days. When I returned, I noticed something odd. My garage. My car was missing. I panicked. I called up the building security and reported it. He immediately pulled up the camera footage of the last 3 days, and after hours of reeling through it, we found my father driving off my car. He didn't break in. He had the keys. I couldn't wrap my head around it, but still sort of relieved that it was in safe hands. I called him up to check, but he declined my calls. I had no idea how he got the keys because my keys were still at my apartment. Despite calling him relentlessly for hours, he didn't respond. It left a sinking feeling in my gut, but I was still hopeful, thinking maybe he had borrowed it for some errand. I drove home, which is 1.5 hours away. When I got there, the truth hit me like a brick. As I entered their driveway, I expected to see my car, but nope, there was none, except that of my parents and Lisa's. I went inside and saw all 3 of them discussing the marriage preps over coffee. I stormed inside and asked them why they were not responding and what happened to my car. My mom was like, "Hello, where's the manners? Where's the greetings?" I said, "I don't have time for that. Where's my car?" They tried to put up an ignorant act. I asked them to cut the crap because I had the camera footage of Dad driving off with my car. He asked me to sit down so that we could talk. He said this so casually as if we were to discuss the weather. Mom was sipping a coffee and without missing a beat, nonchalantly said, "We sold it." I yelled, barely able to contain my anger. "You what?" Dad repeated, "We sold the car. Lisa needed money for her wedding. Since you wouldn't step up, we had to take matters into our own hands." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just any car. It was a 1967 Chevy Impala, a classic beauty my late grandfather had left me in his will. He and I had spent countless weekends restoring it together when I was a teenager. That car wasn't just a vehicle. It was a piece of him, a reminiscence of my childhood. I shouted at them, "How could they sell it without my permission?" Dad snapped at me saying it was his father's car and he can do whatever he wants. I snapped back, "You had no right. The car was mine. Grandpa left it to me and not you." My parents, especially Dad, didn't like that my grandpa left his beloved car to me. He was expecting it for himself along with other assets. However, my grandpa left most of it to Aunt, who cared for him in his last days, and the car for me, because out of his 9 grandchildren, from 4 uncles, I was the only one who kept in touch with him, called and showed up whenever he was sick. I ensured to visit him at least once or twice a year despite living hours away from him. My father, who lived 30 minutes away, hardly checked upon him, and when he got nothing from his will, he got salty and called names to the dead man. When I asked him how he had the keys to the car, he laughed. "That's my father's, dummy. I used to sneak out in that car as a young boy. Don't you think I would have the spare key?" It got me thinking that my parents were making this plan for a long time, and that's why they didn't push me hard for the money. They knew I'd go for a work trip every month, and they used that as an opportunity to steal my car. We had a planned crime, you see. Lisa, who had been sitting smugly in the corner, piped up, "I'm so glad Dad sold it. You manipulated Grandpa for that car. He always favored you, and it's not fair. Since he didn't leave anything for us, you should have shared that car with us, but you didn't. You paid the price for your selfishness." Her jealousy wasn't new to me, but this was a whole new level. I shot her back that they didn't get anything because they didn't care for him. Mom intervened, saying, "Why are you even fighting so much? That car anyway was just sitting there. Why are you being so fussy about it?" I didn't get into a useless fight with them. Instead, I told my parents I wanted the car back immediately. They just smirked. Mom scoffed, "You do have your own car. You were anyways not driving that old one, so it better be of use somewhere else." I ignored her and asked Dad to call up whomever he had sold it and get it back ASAP. Lisa intervened, saying, "Who's going to pay for it getting back?" I screamed at her, "You and all of you who stole and sold it." Mom was like, "Sorry, honey, but we used up that money for the venue and for other wedding arrangements." I said, "I don't care. I want my car back at all costs." Ultimately, we came to the conclusion that I would get the car back from the dealer and they would pay me back the money in installments. I hesitantly agreed because at that moment, my priority was to get my car back before it got sold out. Dad called up the dealership where he sold it, but to my bad luck, he already sold it to someone else at double the price. I almost broke down and yelled at my dad to get me the car at any cost. Sister laughed and called me sissy pants. Mom tried to calm me down, saying, "It's just a car. Let it go. You're being dramatic." Dramatic? That car was my inheritance. It was part of my grandfather's legacy. They didn't even seem to understand or care what they had done. When I threatened legal action, they laughed even harder. Dad chuckled with a smirk. "You're going to sue your own family?" Lisa laughed out loud with a sneer. "Try it. Now the court will take you seriously." I came back to my place defeated. It's been a week since then, and I'm wrestling with a decision. My friends had conflicting opinions. Some said I should let it go, knowing that my father couldn't afford to pay that money back. Others encouraged me to stand my ground. After battling my thoughts for a couple of more days, I decided enough was enough. Today I filed a police report and sued my parents for theft. After all, this wasn't just about the car. It's about boundaries, respect, and justice. The ops are yet to contact my parents regarding it, and that's why it's silent. Feels like the dead silence before the storm, and it's making me uneasy anticipating the ugly confrontations ahead. On this sub, I was trying to find the guy who posted about suing his parents for inheritance a year back, but I couldn't get him. Maybe he has deleted his account or something, but others, what do you guys think? Moreover, how do I deal with it now when they come charging at me for suing them? Honestly, I do feel like sissy pants, as my sister called me. I get why you're so upset. It's not just about the car, it's about respect and boundaries, which your family clearly doesn't understand. Your dad's comments about it being his father's car and he can do what he wants just show how little they value your connection to your grandfather and the effort you put into preserving that memory. And your sister completely dismissing your feelings over it? It just adds to the absurdity. You made the right call, OP. Stand your ground. Update 1. Ugh, it was rough. So my sister's wedding was 2 days after I reported the theft. I came back from the station and wrote my original post. Meanwhile, the cops verified the camera footage I shared, and they also came to my apartment and interrogated the building manager. The cops questioned the security of the building as to how someone who doesn't live there would drive away with the resident's car. The manager didn't suspect it to be a theft because my dad had the keys. The case wasn't as complicated as my parents thought it would be. The car was legally mine, and I had proof of ownership, including my grandfather's will. The footage from my security camera was the nail in the coffin. My parents had no leg to stand on. The cops called up my dad to inform him about the lawsuit. He was in the middle of the family dinner with sister-in-laws. He left it midway, citing work reasons. He came out and blasted me over the call. He said he was going to come up and rip me apart for dragging them to the court. He was immediately summoned to the station, and, of course, it's all my fault. He called me nonstop, leaving voicemails about how I was ungrateful for everything he'd done for me. Everything he's done for me? The man stole my car, sold it, and laughed when I said I'd sue. He said I owe him my career, and what I am is because of his sacrifices. Oh, sure, he did his fatherly duties to raise me, but I have my contributions too. I bore my college expenses. I paid the whole of my student loan. He never pitched in even for a month, nor did he give my pocket money during college. I was left to lead a life on my own, even before I turned 18, while they nursed Lisa until she was 22, and even after that. How was this fair? Later that evening, Mom called me in her high-pitched and dramatic tone, sobbing about how I had ruined Lisa's big day. She begged me to drop the case, saying, "We're family. How could you involve the police? Do you even know how humiliating this is for us?" I told her it was humiliating for me too. Heartbreaking that my parents would steal from me, and that my sister was calling me names while spending my inheritance money on her wedding. Lisa joined in on the call, screaming about how I was selfish and ruining her life. She said I was jealous of her happiness and doing this to get back at her for the car. I hung up. I wasn't about to waste energy arguing with someone who thought entitlement was a personality trait. The lawsuit sent shockwaves to the family. Some of the extended family called me selfish and heartless for dragging my parents to court. They're the same ones who objected when I inherited Grandpa's car. They advocated that Dad should get it, and then, if he wished, he could pass it down to me. Despite all the noise, I stood firm. They had stolen from me, plain and simple, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it just because we shared DNA. Only a handful of people sympathized with them. Most people were disgusted by my dad for selling off a vintage family car. Later, I got to know from my close cousins that Lisa's wedding ended up being scaled down. Apparently, word got out about the theft, and her fiancé's family started asking questions. Let's just say, having your father-in-law under investigation for stealing a car doesn't exactly scream of a reputed family. The wedding still happened, though. My sister banned me from attending it, as if I was dying to go. Cousins told me that my father was mostly missing during the wedding. He was seen busy talking over the call or something. People guessed he was maybe talking to a lawyer or taking suggestions from his friends or acquaintances, but he looked stressed and absent-minded. He wasn't able to even walk her down the aisle, which frowned everyone. I knew Dad was busy hiring a lawyer and dealing with the legal matters. As the investigations were underway, my parents were sweating. They tried to convince me to drop the case multiple times, saying it was ruining the family name, but I wasn't backing down. They even tried to settle the matter outside of court. Dad promised to pay me back for the money in installments. I didn't buy it. I knew they wouldn't, and this drama would go on forever. I said since the matter had reached the court, let the law decide for us. Eventually, the court ordered them to pay me the full value of the car, plus damages. They had to liquidate the portion of their savings to pay for everything, plus the legal fees broke their bank account. As soon as we came outside the court, Mom came charging at me as if she was about to beat the crap out of me. She practically disowned me, stating I brought shame to the family, and it was such a disgrace to call me their son. I should never show my face again, and all those words, you know. They were not only hurt because of the court case, but also because Lisa's dream wedding was ruined. Instead of being a happy event, it turned out to be a gossip party where everyone was talking about the bride's father who was charged with theft by her brother. Well, I cannot do anything about it. They called for it. They conveniently shifted the blame on me, saying if I agreed to fund the wedding in the first place, none of this would have happened. They can say anything they want in their defense, but their dirty laundry is out for the world to see, and it stinks. I don't feel any bad about my actions, not really. If they'd respected my boundaries and my property, none of this would have happened. That car meant the world to me. While I couldn't get it back, I've learned an important lesson. Sometimes, the only way to deal with entitled people, even family, is to hold them accountable. Update 2. Guys, there's news. I had posted about my story, shorter version of the original post on a few vintage car forums asking for help to track down the car. A couple of months later, I finally got a lead. Turns out the guy who had bought the car saw my post online. He reached out to me, saying he had no idea the car was sold under shady circumstances and was willing to return it if I reimbursed him. I was ecstatic, but then I saw the price he paid, double what my dad sold it for. Apparently my dad had undervalued it massively because he was desperate for quick cash. The dealer washed it, fixed and replaced a few of the minor parts, and sold it at almost 3 to 4 times what he had paid to Dad. The new owner had paid top dollar for a classic beauty, and now I was stuck trying to figure out how to get my car back without going broke. Initially, I thought to let it go because the price was huge, but then something snapped in me. Maybe the memories of my grandpa or just the pure zeal to have it back. I thought maybe the universe gave me a signal to have the car back, and that's why the new owner contacted me. If not for this, then why did I get a positive lead? I liquidated my savings, which I kept aside for the down payment of a house. It hurts, but what can I do about it? I can still save and have a house later, but that was the last chance of me having my grandpa's car. Lisa and my parents got even more bitter when they got to know that I was able to buy the car back. Mom sent me an email that I was no longer their son and I should remove the family name from my name. I didn't respond, but now I'm thinking about getting it removed. I don't lament about not having a family. At least I have my car back and my peace of mind. Also, a few weeks back, I heard that all is not well at Lisa's. Her husband has been disrespectful towards her because of that theft case. He's been mocking her and my parents, which of course didn't go down well with Lisa. There's no talks about separation or divorce yet, but their marriage is shaky. Obviously, I got the blame for everything. I'm that brother who ruined the family's reputation and tore it apart. Well, what can I say? Driving 1967 Chevy Impala Beauty makes everything so bearable. It's wild that you managed to track down the car. I can't blame you for wanting it back, even at the higher price. Nothing beats sentimental value. That car means more than money, and the fact that you could reclaim that piece of your grandfather's legacy is something really special. It's a shame that your family's dysfunction continues to affect Lisa's marriage. But honestly, it's not your fault. Don't let them undermine your choices. You've done the right thing, and that's what matters most. What do you think? Is it just a car? Did OP go too far? Thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.